Are you interested in playing a build that actually makes you feel like you're playing a monk? A build that has meaningful and very satisfying combat, and a build that depends on the player's skill to be more efficient? Then this might be a build for you. This is an all-rounder build. This is Invoker, Frozen Locus, Shattering Palm. So the strengths and weaknesses of this build are obviously, if it can do every content, it's not best for any content, right? So it's an all-rounder, and I build it like an all-rounder, so you can do everything, but you're not like gonna one-shot every boss like the Lightning Spear, Frenzy, Sticking, Snake ability does, for example. But you can do everything. Also, another strength and weakness at the same time is I feel like this is the most skill-capped build I played so far. You can really try hard and really pull off combos that get valued. You really feel a big difference in mapping when you are getting better and better and better with using the abilities of this build. But some people just maybe want to play laid back, want to play Lightning Spear, then Lightning Spear is probably beating this in every way right now. But if you are interested in such a build, then you're welcome. I invested a lot of time min-maxing this build, and I think I'm kind of happy with what I came up with so far, and I want to get into that. So why are we, first of all, playing Invoker? Invoker, in my opinion, is the best ascendancy in the game right now when it comes to defenses, because you can double your HP with Meditate. Meditate is an ability that the Ascendancy is granting you, and is, in my opinion, the single best Ascendancy point that exists right now. You can just channel Meditate, and you can overflow Energy Shield, just like Grim Feast was able to before. But now we don't have Grim Feast, and now this is the only source of overflow we have. It basically doubles your EHP, and being overflown has so many upsides. Like there are a lot of builds, for example, that utilize Leech, but being overflown and having control of everything, basically, you can always just overflow back whenever you feel like it. It is such an insanely good defense. And at the same time, you still need to use a quarterstaff to use some of the abilities that we are using. But you fix Spirit with Lead Me Through Grace. So you basically have some offensive nodes with Sunder My Enemies and I Am the Thunder, and you fix Spirit and you double your EHP. That's a pretty solid ascendancy if you ask me, especially if you compare it to others, like, for example, the Acolyte of Chayula. The defenses of his build are basically like the Ice Strike has been before, or like every Monk Ice Strike build has been. We are stacking Evasion and especially Energy Shield. So I have a lot of items that give me a lot of defense on the gear. I have a lot of nodes that give me Energy Shield on the tree. And that's basically how we scale defenses. Secondly, stun and ailment threshold. We are stacking ES, right? So there is this one node on the tree, or like these nodes on the tree, which are very useful. Gain additional ailment threshold and stun threshold equal to a percentage of maximum energy shield. We take this node, and the jewels that we are utilizing in here also have these modes. While you want to prefer the stun threshold, getting a little bit more of ailment threshold doesn't really hurt. But I would always prefer the stun threshold. And you can just also not take any ailment threshold, take a freeze charm, and just probably be fine anyways. This felt really good, I'm not gonna lie. Solving it with jewels, solving it with this passive, and maybe also early on you can get an anoint, like for example, this one, austerity measures. These kind of things actually make this build feel really good. Additionally, with the stun charm, every content felt really decent, honestly. I also did Simulacrum. This build has no problem at all with Simulacrum. I did not at any point lose my overflow at all. I was basically always above 100% of my HP. So we are chilling. Next up, Frozen Locus is our main damage ability, but not our main clearing ability. Early on, it can be the clearing ability. I will link a Twitch highlight where I did a little bit of an early campaign run in Hardcore SSF, where you guys can look into a little bit. I will also link a path of building with a leveling tree and leveling gems in the description. There, in the campaign, when you fresh start, you can play this from level 2 onwards. After you kill Miller, you can instantly take a Frozen Locus. There, maybe the Frozen Locus is still used for clear, but later on, you want to eventually go into a build where you are clearing with Shattering Palm only, and only use Frozen Locus on tougher enemies like rare monsters or bosses. Frozen Locus is an ability that makes you spawn this thing on the ground. This thing on the ground will spread chilled ground, and this ice crystal is a little bit like the Frostwall's ice crystal. You can destroy it by, for example, auto-attacking it, which is probably not working too well now, actually one-shot. You can destroy it by auto-attacking it, and then it explodes. This explosion is depending on your area of effect. So if you have concentrated effect in, socketed in, you are going to have obviously less AoE but more damage, and you can see the difference, right, in the explosive radius. This is the way to explode the Frozen Locus, which is the worst way. You kind of, and that is also where a lot of skill cap is involved, you kind of want to always place Frozen Locuses in a way where they instantly explode. I'm going to show some footage here in which you guys can see that I'm fighting a boss. I'm just always Hand of Chayula-ing onto him. So I'm leaping onto him, and then I'm Frozen Locusing away from him, and then the Frozen Locus instantly explodes. This is something that often works, but not always. So this is always the best thing. This requires practice. I'm for real. Every boss feels different. For example, Olroth from Expedition is very easy to pull off. The King in the Mist, it's very easy to pull off. You just Hand of Chayula and Frozen Locus, and you don't have to aim. Zesht, on the other hand, has a little bit of a different hitbox. And for Zesht, the Breach boss, you need to place the Frozen Locusts a little bit differently. You can usually not just spam Hand of Chayula into Frozen Locus. And same for a lot of very small monsters, like the little beetles that are spawned in the first Act 3 zone, for example. Like, basically how it works is the same like Frostwall works. The Frozen Locust, and that's what it comes down to, basically needs to be able to not move the enemy. So if you place the Frozen Locust so that the enemy would like not be able to move, then it explodes. So if you place the Frozen Locust always in the middle of the hitbox, that means that now there is an entity that you are spawning that is in the place of the boss, but because the boss is already there, or the rare monster, or whatever, it just explodes. So you always want to put the Frozen Locust where the hitbox of the enemy is, so that the enemy cannot be pushed away. That's also how the frost walls work. If any one of you guys ever played with it, if you place them on big monsters, everywhere where the big monster already is and the big monster cannot be moved, it just explodes, and then it can deal a lot of damage, and it can be a very high single target. Like Doriani is a very, very big hitbox, and when nearly everything of a frost wall explodes, I think also on the Chimera, in the Chimera Wetlands. That's the best way, basically. And then there is a third way. So way number one, you attack it yourself, pretty bad because annoying and loses damage uptime. Second way, the boss explodes it because you place it on the boss, and the boss, is already there, so it just explodes. And the third way is you place a Frozen Locust and you calculate in your head already if the monsters destroy it. So for example, just if like Skelly mages are throwing projectiles, you can put a Frozen Locust there, and the projectiles will hit the Frozen Locust instead. It's a little bit like a totem then. And then it can explode as well, because it just has a maximum life of, at level 33 even right now, it is a maximum life at 1364. I'm not even sure, honestly, if it scales with, it doesn't even scale with gem level. So it is rather low HP. And it's rather easily explodable by monsters. These are the three ways how to explode Frozen Locust. And when it explodes, it deals a lot of damage. You can already see level 33 right now, in-game attack damage 2,687%. That is a lot of damage. And the other important thing, it is not using your quarterstaff. What does that mean? The physical damage or the lightning damage, the implicit of your quarterstaff does not do anything for the damage. All flat elemental damage, all flat fizz, all percent fizz, all of this does nothing. There are only 3 stats. So also crit doesn't do anything, and attacks per second. Every stat on the weapon that is at the top here, all of these do all 0 for Frozen Locust. What does something is critical damage bonus, elemental damage with attacks, and plus level 2 melee skills, and technically dexterity, gain mana per enemy kill. The global attack things that can roll on a weapon that do not use your weapon necessarily. All of these work. The only 3 very important stats you want to take care of, and the highest priority, is plus level to gems. Secondly, critical damage bonus. And thirdly, increased elemental damage with attacks. So this staff should also have a different soul cost. I didn't change them yet, but that are the 3 very important things that work with the ability and that you should utilize, and that's also the 3 stats you only need. And now a lot of people will realize the big upside of this build. Plus 6 to all melee skills, for example, is just -1 level to what I currently have right here, is fairly common. Increased elemental damage with attacks is fairly common. And crit multiplier or critical damage bonus is still kind of common. And you only need 3 stats and you already have a best-in-slot weapon. That means instead of having to craft some 6-stat weapon, you can already settle with 3 stats. That is, to be fair, only 90% of the truth. I will come to that in a little bit. But when it only comes to Frozen Locus and Shattering Palm, which are our 2 main abilities, this is completely true. For bossing, this is completely true. For mapping, we will talk about that in a little bit. Shattering Palm is the other ability I mentioned. Again, it does not use your quarterstaff, but requires you to wear a quarterstaff. You dash to an enemy and strike them with your bare fist, and it gets flat added cold damage based on the gem level. And you guys maybe already saw, we are scaling gem levels. This is our main damage scaling. Both these abilities, Frozen Locus and Shattering Palm, have something very important and interesting. They have base crit chance, and that base crit chance is rather high. 11% here, and on the Frozen Locus, I think it's 13% even, but it doesn't show right now. Explore, yeah, yeah, it does show. 13%. And now you guys realize, wait, that's really, really high base crit chance. Crossbows have 5%, bows have 5%, quarterstaffs have 10, but this is even 13 or 11. And that is a very, very obvious reason why when you are entering maps, you want to swap to crit setups already. It is very easy to get up to like 40%, 50% crit very early on with this build. And you can even scale it up. Effectively, I usually have 79% in the end. We will go into the POB and I will explain that in a bit. So both abilities do not use directly your weapon, but they have a lot of high crit chance, and you can, with gem level scaling, get a lot of flat damage on them. Shattering Palm is the ability I wanted to explain. You are dashing to an enemy, Lee Sin, Q, second part. Yeah, League of Legends, Lee Sin, Q, second part. You are dashing to an enemy, and what happens is a shockwave emits out of it. This shockwave is doing something very interesting. This explosion, this AoE explosion, is marking all enemies with something that I would say is a self-chaining Herald of Ice. If one of them dies, all the other ones are like Herald of Ice exploding. They will shatter, so their corpses are getting removed. And this explosion itself, again, deals damage, also based on attack damage. And this is one of the small things where you are not just unarmed and where weapon damage is important, or flat damage on gear. This one actually uses attack damage. And this is one part of the clear. So what you want to do is start by killing one of the monsters, and then all of them are chaining off each other. You can technically also scale a little bit of AoE to have way better clear, but we will get to clear in a little bit. Let's actually do it now. So clear. Cast on Freeze and Herald of Thunder are working together. And this build, funny-wise, you guys maybe remember that in the patch notes they removed the self-chaining of Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder. Well, it's back. That's the TLDR. The same stuff happens here. We cast on Freeze, which is an aura, which reserves 60 spirit, and cast on Freeze is getting triggered a lot because we have a lot of cold damage on our Shattering Palm. So while we are mapping, we have a lot of freezes. And we kind of pump it also with our passive tree, right? Freeze, build up, getting a little bit, feel it out, okay? So basically, this is just Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder from last patch, and that means you need some chance to freeze to get the chain going. Why do you not really need chance to shock? Because Voltaic Mark is the cast on freeze setup. We Voltaic Mark enemies. Voltaic Mark is a mark where you are marking one target, and it has additionally, beside of like you have more chance to shock that marked enemy, and shock has increased effect, it additionally has a Nova part. This Nova part is basically creating a lightning Nova based on your attack damage with some decent crit again, and deals a lot of lightning damage and has a very high chance to shock, 200% more chance to shock. And this Nova, dealing lightning damage, shocking enemies, is triggering Herald of Thunder. Our Herald of Thunder, again, will have Cold Infusion and Glaciation, and is based on our attack damage. This is, by the way, where I said for mapping, it is definitely helpful to still have some flat damage on your weapon as well. But for single target, only the 3 stats I talked about earlier are important. But like Herald of Thunder and Voltaic Mark, so your clear still depends a little bit on your damage. And if you can get your hands on a weapon that has additionally to the melee skills, to the weapon elemental damage, and to the critical damage bonus, also some good flat damage prefixes, take that over a weapon that only has those 3 stats. No? So basically what happens is the Herald of Thunder freezes stuff. The freeze is cast or is generating energy for the cast on freeze very fast, very often. Like you dash once and you trigger Voltaic Mark multiple times. Yeah, and then you are in the loop. You are shocking with Voltaic Mark. You're dealing lightning damage with Voltaic Mark. When you kill one singular enemy, it releases the Nova. The Nova deals lightning damage. Lightning damage triggers Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder deals a lot of cold damage. Herald of Thunder is freezing stuff. Freezing stuff is generating energy. So the next Voltaic Mark gets cast. And that looks really good. Like I have a lot of clips. It does not always look as good as you guys can currently see in these clips. Obviously, they are like clips of best scenarios. But you can always build up more. You can invest more into freeze build-up. You can invest more into shock and all of these things. And you can invest more into AoE. You can invest more into flat damage. And you can always make it work like Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. It is gear dependent and investment dependent. And I personally decided to not invest too much into it. This is our clear. Single target, clear, both solved. One comment I want to do in between. It is obviously not Lightning Spear level. Lightning Spear is cracked, okay? We will not reach that. But it is a very active playstyle where you are dashing around a lot, where you're doing some combos, where you are using Hand of Chayula for single target, for example, and it is actually fun. I gotta say, I played a lot of Ice Strike. Ice Strike also has a built-in dash. This is completely different. This feels so much better. This right here, this build feels like you get rewarded a lot for playing well, but it also works quite decent while you are just laid back, want to chill out a little bit in the evening and just grind a little bit. All right, next up. The Hand of Chayula is the bossing ability. Basically, it is just like the Shattering Palm, just without the wave. It is just you dash to an enemy, but the only thing that we care about is you are inflicting a mark that you link to it. So, Sniper's Mark is linked to Hand of Chayula. And thus, always, we are dashing to a boss, Hand of Chayulaing, and then the boss is getting Sniper's Marked, and then we are Frozen Locusing it, so that the Frozen Locus gets the increased critical damage bonus from Sniper's Mark. The Frozen Locus is always dashing us back, right? It is an ability that moves you backwards. And you can either run back here and do it again, and run back here and do it again, or you do the Hand of Chayula in between, which can also explode the crystal, by the way. Hand of Chayula also is linked with Rage and Blind. And now I want to get into the support gems on the other abilities. Why do I link it with Rage? That's rather obvious. On single target, we want to generate some Rage. It's just some additional damage multiplier, right? It is a global more attack damage increase. Inspiration is just some comfiness, right? So that it does not need as much mana, because if we scale gem levels, the mana gets really bad. And then there's Blind in here. Well, if you use Blind on an ability that only hits one enemy on single target, Blind is not doing a lot. So why do I have it in? There's actually a very good reason for it, and that is the support gems in Frozen Locus. We use Blindside. Frozen Locus has the big problem that there are not really perfect support gems for it. Cold Mastery is increasing our damage by maybe 12%. Blindside has the, I guess, downside, quote unquote downside, that you need to have blinded enemies. But if the enemy you are attacking is blind, it has a lot of value. 15% more critical damage bonus is a lot of damage when you crit, and more chance to critically hit, obviously self-explanatory, right? So every time, like this does not work while mapping, but every time you are Hand of Chayulaing, which by the way is an ability that can't be evaded, so you always hit the enemy. You blind it, and then you use blindside support, and that's why blind is linked to Hand of Chayula. Primal Armament is obvious. So even though you don't use your weapon, your quarterstaff, more weapon elemental damage or elemental damage with attacks, this both still works, okay? Primal Armament is just 25% more damage. Outside of a flat phys, I don't even remember if I have any flat phys. Yeah, I don't even have flat physical damage left. But if you would have flat physical damage, then technically, yeah, but 25% more multiplayer. Overextend is another one. Dazed is just a debuff that makes you a little bit more easy to get stunned, but at the same time, we cannot really be heavy stunned here, and we have a lot of stun threshold. I never felt, like, since the point I started using this, I never felt the downside of this. And has 30% more critical damage bonus, which is a more multiplayer, which is really good. So, lastly, concentrated effect, just 30% more damage, self-explanatory, less AoE. And when you are not using Frozen Locus anymore too much for clear, you can always leave it in for bosses. Maybe early on when you start mapping and Shattering Palm by itself is not yet enough to one-shot enemies, you can also put in Magnified Effect while you are mapping, and when you are reaching the map boss, you put in Concentrated. But that's the support gems we are using here. Shattering Palm, Ice Bite. Ice Bite, very quick explanation. When you freeze an enemy, you get a buff that gives you 35% extra cold damage, right? Off damage is extra cold damage. Funny thing, ailments in PoE 2 work in a way where if I Shattering Palm to the enemy and the enemy does not die, and then, for example, I freeze it with Frozen Locus, the Ice Bite still activates, because the freeze build-up started by the Shattering Palm, and the enemy's freeze is like saved as being originated from Shattering Palm. So always when you just dash to an enemy first with Shattering Palm, which you always do to gap close, the Ice Bite will always work even if you freeze with Frozen Locus. This is one of a few reasons, by the way, why we are not using Elemental Focus on Frozen Locus, which is a support gem that works, but it is bricking shocking enemies and it is bricking freezing enemies, and we want to have both of these, very importantly. Then Shattering Palm, you dash to one enemy, and as I said, you mark all of the enemies in the area, and you want to kill one of them to get the chain going with Voltaic Mark, right? Remember, Voltaic Mark has the Nova that triggers when you kill an enemy, right? So you want to kill one enemy specifically. And if you dash to an enemy and have a 25% more attack damage multiplier with close combat, that's not bad. And you are always in the face of the enemy, so close combat feeling good. Martial Tempo is pure feeling. Technically not needed. Technically, you could put another stuff in here. But it feels good, and Momentum is one of the very cool supports. I think, I am not 100% sure, but I think it was added in 0.2. After moving 2 meters, you deal 40% more damage. And now Shattering Palm, 2 meters, by the way, is basically like I'm showing with my mouse. Now, this is 2 meters top, and this is 2 meters to the left, more or less. It's basically like you lie down on the ground with your character, okay? And to the top, because it's 16:9, the format of the video you guys are watching, to the top 2 meters is obviously a little bit less than to the left and right. But yeah, 2 meters is very short. So if you basically dash at all, like if I would dash from here to this is probably already enough. Maybe this is enough. And you usually always do that. Or also, if I would dash here now, this is also 2 meters. And then you just have a 40% more damage multiplier. But it is important to know that. It is important to be aware of that. So do not just copy-paste my build. Read the gems. Think about them. Because if you know about this now, instead of just standing in the face of an enemy and Shattering Palm, Shattering Palm, Shattering Palm, you now know, aha, I kind of want to dash 2 meters at least to have a 40% more damage multi. And then lastly, Ambush. Shattering Palm has less crit than Frozen Locus, do you remember? 13 and 11. And my Shattering Palm is at a very beautiful critical strike chance of 49.08. You kind of want to have 50, honestly. But we then get 100% more multiplier and ambush. My goodness, I love the design of that support gem. We are dashing to an enemy, and this is basically just 100% more crit chance, and it basically caps us. Now you are wondering maybe, actually, why is it 49? That would trigger me. That doesn't mean you're not always crit. Yeah, but I am using Charge Infusion Combat Frenzy with Resonance. No? So every time I am freezing an enemy, I generate a power charge. I consume the power charge with Charge Infusion. I get 20% more critical hit chance, and then I'm over 50%. However, on the first monster that I hit in the map, technically I am not crit capped, but afterwards you usually always are crit capped. Okay, Combat Frenzy and Charge Infusion, I already told you guys about them and how they work. That's all they do. And Wind Dancer is obvious. You get evasion. You can use Unbreakable to have a little bit more stun threshold. But when you get hit once, it's kind of gone. It's kind of cool to prevent a little bit of a first initial hit. Arm's length so that the monsters get knocked back a little bit more. Clarity is something you could also put somewhere else. And you could theoretically actually put in Pin and Lockdown on Wind Dancer now. The problem is Wind Dancer is scaling with attack damage of you. I don't know where it is exactly showing. It should be here. And it's 300 at level 30 gem. So if you don't have a good weapon, like you can scale it, but you will not really pin with it unless you have a very good weapon. You guys get where I am going with this, right? You can put it in. I should put it in. It's actually a little bit of a mini fault. I will change that in the build guide, actually. And yeah, all the information is, by the way, in the Mobalytics build guide. Lastly, and when we are already done with the gems, is Mana Remnants. And now we get to a very important part of this build. You scale gem levels, and I'm at 700 mana. And maybe people now think, your Frozen Locus, I saw you use it already. It has 400 mana. You can't even cast it twice. That's right, but Mana Remnants is the most sleeper aura in this game, genuinely. I want to explain to you guys what it does. Every time you kill an enemy, you have a 25% chance to create a remnant. You can pick that up, and then you are getting mana back, 216. So when you are jumping into packs of monsters and maps, usually they are consisting of like 10 to 15 monsters, you get your mana back. And when you are critically hitting, and that's the very good feeling part, and you are bossing with this, you also get a remnant, but only every 2 seconds. But because we are only, like we are like we are Frozen Locusing, Hand of Chayula, Frozen Locus, Hand of Chayula, Frozen Locus, Hand of Chayula, right? It is fine. We don't attack often. Every 2 seconds is pretty good because this combination is taking us basically a slight bit more than 1 second. So every second time, the Mana Remnant would be spawning. And Mana Remnants feel insanely good. And then there are a few support gems that can make you collect them from further away. They have more effect. You can also, Interlude is really, really test it and feel it out yourself if you want to use it. But having this increased effect feels really good. Yeah, so instead of having a 216 mana, you have 35 and 25% increased effect. So you basically get like around 400 left mana back, which is really good, right? And then we need to look into some of a path of buildings. I linked them all in the Mobalytics guide, okay? So you can just go to the Mobalytics and then there are all the different versions. But I want to talk about the softcore juicer version of this, and I want to explain to you guys how it works and what you are doing there. So let's get into it. In the softcore juicer version, you will realize at the left of the screen that there is a DPS of 11 million. I want to explain how this DPS is happening. Basically, my attack time of Frozen Locus in-game is 0.74 seconds. And by getting this 26% less attack speed modifier in here, I am basically cheating myself into letting POB think that a Frozen Locus, like I want to know how much is one explosion doing, right? And now I have 1 second exactly of attack time to create the Frozen Locus, and POB, because of a 26% less attack speed, is showing me 1 explosion. dealing 11 million damage. And now you guys see where we are going. If we have a lot of mana costs, and basically we can only cast one Frozen Locus, and we already have to use our mana flask, that is really annoying unless you kill everything in as much mana flask charges you have. If I enter Arbiter 4, and I know Arbiter 4 is something around 36 million, I think, HP, in the softcore juicer version, I'm looking at 4 Frozen Locusts at most, and he's dead. So I press my mana flask 4 times, and I'm good, and I'm out. And this Path of Building is pretty min-maxed, to be fair. The softcore trade juicer version has still 14,000 energy shield when you meditate up, and 6,000 evasion rating, and you still have 11 million, but it's probably somewhat around a mirror. And the reason it is probably somewhat around a mirror is if you right now see this video and you're one of the first few people that see this video and you're interested in this build, and you go to softcore trade, this Prism of Belief right now I just watched is there are multiple ones with +3 in softcore trade for 1 divine. Multiple ones. But now the damage difference. I want you guys to see the damage difference of having this jewel and not having this is very significant. For 1 jewel, this is insane difference in damage, okay? This is why this is the softcore juicer version, okay? I'm pretty sure if this build is played by a few people, this will skyrocket its price. It is still not necessary. You're still at 8 million, but this is something I do not have because no one in hardcore trade, I'm playing hardcore trade, no one in hardcore trade has this, okay? But this is basically the damage and the concept we are looking at. We have mana cost. They exist, but we only need to be able to just like have enough mana to cast the Frozen Locus. And then we just press our mana flask, and then afterwards we will get some mana remnants back and all. Just have enough damage and don't solve mana is the TLDR here. Yeah, and while we are mapping with the Shattering Palm, mana remnants, that's fixing literally everything. I do not have a single gear piece that is giving me mana sustain anywhere. Maybe because this is the softcore juicer POB, this is a level 39, 39 Frozen Locus. Maybe you need to take these 3 nodes eventually when you are reaching like level 35 plus. Elsewise, like without the jewel, you could use these 3 nodes again to put into damage. But yeah, you can also test around with this POB. You can maybe unspec a little bit more of the defenses because you maybe think I still do not need 14,000 energy shield. But that's why, like when I made this POB, I really realized how much potential this build actually has in the end. It is feeling comfy for so many reasons, right? You ignore enemy resistances with 80% crit chance, so 80% of the time you just ignore elemental resistances. That means, and with Ambush and with Shattering Palm, you always have 100 on your Shattering Palm, right? While mapping, you always ignore elemental resistances. Really, really strong, because 50 all-res mod exists, lightning, cold resistant, rare modifier exists, and some bosses have some resistances, and you just, if you always crit or 80% on the Frozen Locus, ignore them, really solid damage. Then I am the Thunder. This is another thing I want to talk about. We are not using elemental focus because we want to shock. And since we are getting 10% of our damage as extra lightning damage, we are always shocking if we deal like 10 million with a hit. It's easily enough to always shock everything. We always also ignite stuff, right? I am having some flat damage on like ruby rings and like prismatic rings. And with this, we can take this wheel and we will get a lot of it. But yeah, this is the softcore juicer version. This probably is still not min-maxed. This is probably a mirror budget, right? This staff might be very high budget eventually. It is not expensive at all right now in softcore trade, but maybe when people start playing this, it will be. But yeah, this is kind of min-maxed. If we then, however, now go into the normal and my current hardcore trade version, we are looking at something like 2 million, which is without the Prism of Belief, which is, however, also with 18,000 ES and 7,500 evasion rating instead. And this is realistic DPS that you actually can have. Like every Frozen Locus right now is dealing 1.4 million or something when I'm critting on Zesh tier 4. And yeah, this POB is what my current character is basically exactly. You can obviously, especially if you're in softcore trade, change a lot of stuff. But yeah, the cool thing is you can fresh start this. You can play it in hardcore. You can play it in solo self-on. I did a run with it. It feels way worse, obviously, than something like Rake. Rake is a spear ability that is basically the meta right now in 0.2, which is even faster. But it felt pretty good to play with this. And I would even urge you guys to start with it from level 2. Maybe it's not the easiest campaign you ever had. Maybe your Lightning Spear campaign was easy and all. But it's really good to start it, to learn the builds. I genuinely would say you really don't want to just put gear on and eventually start with it. Actually, like when you are in maps, actually take it from level 2. Try it out. Have fun with it. Try out different monk abilities. If you just get, just every level, check vendors for +2 gem or +3 melee gems. Staff, if you just have a +2, you will always have enough damage throughout the campaign. You just need the gem levels, and that's really it is really such a natural way of scaling damage. No? Just try to get plus level to gems and increase elemental damage. You don't care about physical DPS on your weapon, you don't care about elemental DPS on your weapon. You can just chill with some item level 10 staff that has +2 to melee gems and 30% increased elemental damage, and that will probably take you through the whole campaign. It really feels good. And yeah, the scaling of damage we talked about, but the gear itself. Let us actually look at the gear that I have and how to craft it. It is just your average monk gear with scaling damage by using melee skills. So you have it on gloves and on your amulet. Eventually, the Giga softcore trade juice is corrupting your amulet for another +1. It is possible. One of the corruption outcomes is +1 to level of all skills. But yeah, you want to have plus gem levels, plus gem levels, plus gem levels. You want to have flat damage on your rings. And fixed resistances, attributes, rarity. Also increased cold damage is obviously good. With your suffixes, ingenuity eventually works. Until ingenuity, just take triple res belt, triple resistance belt, energy shield, movement speed, and all the other stuff here. Plus to level 2 gems, flat damage again, energy shield, resistances, energy shield, resistances. And yeah, crit chance is also good. Eventually, maybe on the amulet, you also want to have some crit chance. But that's it. This is how to gear this, basically. Yeah. And how do you craft this? Well, there is one thing that I will blend in right now. If you are in SSF, recombs have a very interesting tech. I'm showing it right here, where it has +7 to melee gems and increased elemental damage with attacks. And if I recombine it with a tier 1 prefix, it still has an unchanged chance of 50% for success. So that means you can always, with recombinators, get a weapon pretty easy, because you have a 50% chance to cleanse a weapon that has 2 of the good mods that you want. So plus level 2 gems and crit multi player, or like increased critical damage bonus, or +7 to gems and increased elemental damage with attacks. And you can cleanse that off, and then you have new chances to exalt slam your weapon to eventually get a perfect one. Now, the perfect one is just elemental damage, critical damage bonus, and plus level 2 melee gems. For most of the other gear, at the end of the day, Essence of Haste can be helpful for your 35 movement speed, but you need 82 item level base, right? Recombinators work for most things. Everything that is defense oriented, yeah, like a body armor with good high % ES and evasion, and flat ES evasion has a pretty high chance. So recomb, and at the end of the day, it's still in the game. And especially in the first few days of a character progress, it's probably always good to pick up items, put a transmute and an augment on them. And if it's good, you recov it. And if it's still good, you exalt slam it, you know already. But yeah, fracturing orbs also exist now, but that's basically like the one secret, I guess, quote unquote, is recombinators. They feel good. Expedition feels good. I can really urge you guys to try that out, to use that to craft your gear. It works pretty good for me. Then the question that many people always ask, I always do not really know why, but people always ask me, where's the spirit from? from my ascendancy and my body armor. Please just read this. And also they asked me, where do you have so much ES from? Because for some reason, for a lot of people, it's really weird if someone has like 18,000 ES or even 9,000. But guys, it is just my passive tree and my gear. There's nothing else. It is just my passive tree and gear. You just scale these two things. Yeah? And this is the passive tree. Everything also in the mobalytics link in the description for the passive tree and gear. That's it, okay? And meditate, obviously, to overflow twice as much. Yeah, this ascendancy, like, just think about it. It solves spirit. It gives you double the EHP with meditate, with overflowing your life. So you are at 200% of effective HP. It is giving you shock, which this ascendancy point is helping you a lot with. You could also get shock elsewhere. This is the weakest ascendancy point, just to be clear. And some magnitude, which is 3% more damage. Instead of 20% shock, you have 23. And it gives you penetration if you crit. And we are scaling the build to crit as much as possible. It is good for damage, it solves spirit, and it's insane for defense. Insane for defenses. That's why this build is kind of a beauty. The weapon is easy to craft, even in SSF. You should have a decent weapon very early on, actually. You can also just ground ID it, because you only have to hit 3 mods. Yeah? And if you hit 2, you're already good to go. And it just can do everything. It can do Simulacrum, it can do every Pinnacle boss, and it can also, if you like just get the belt, there's this belt Inferno Clasp, I think, plus 5 max fire res. You can take that. You can take like 1 or 2 jewels. You can probably also face tank Arbiter 4 in a sense of you can tank one of the hard hitting abilities. For me, like if you have 18,000 energy shield and you get up to 90 fire max res, you can tank both the Meteor and the Storm ability of Arbiter 4. Only one time, and you don't have sustain, and you need an Ignite Charm, and you need to be fast to log out if you get hit, but it is possible. That's how tanky you can get. And obviously, I didn't die with this character, and I played it nearly to 97 in hardcore. I mean, I guess I proved last league that I could reach 100 with this if I wanted to. Just trust me because of what I did last league. Yeah. And it just does everything quite well. Okay, one thing that is kind of still left is this part up here. Map mods to avoid, yeah? I will put this into the YouTube description as well. You can use this and put this, like you can copy paste this, and you can put this into your stash while you are rolling maps. This is, for example, this has some maps. You can put this in. And then I see, oh, this map has, for example, stun build up, which I don't want to really do. Actually, at this point, I'm running stun build up and less recovery rate sometimes again. But just because I have so much stun threshold and I one-shot the screen oftentimes, so it's kind of fine. And less recovery rate, if like the other mods are really good, I sometimes just endure it. But yeah, you want to not run temp chains, because I don't know who thought that they should add this mode in. Like, no words. Less recovery rate, especially if you run 6 modded maps with, if you would use my Atlas with unstable energies, if it hits the suffixes, it can actually deactivate your meditate, or it can go up to 95 less recovery rate, and then you stand at the beginning of a map and you're meditating for 30 seconds. Just annoying. And then you have minus max res, you have penetrate, and you have stun build up. These are the map mods that I wouldn't run. And now we come to the Annoints. Annoints also interesting. There are a few options, but my goodness, I path of builded a long time yesterday. And this Annoint is crazy. It is crazy. Storm Charged, I am so surprised that it's cheap, because it is genuinely the strongest Annoint for this build. I was very sure that the strongest Annoyant would always be the +1 to gems, but actually this is like 1.5% less damage than this. If you have crit recently, but we always have crit recently, because we are having 100% crit chance on Shattering Palm, and we are having 80% crit chance on Frozen Locus. Yeah, so obviously this has like some degree of situation, but like we always crit recently, honestly. Yeah, you can also anoint something like Patient Barrier and Not Travel here to save some points, so ES, or like a defensive anoint if you feel like you're getting stunned too much. This is interesting as well, obviously. And if you feel like you want to clear the map faster, then Preemptive Strike can be helpful as well, and is kind of cheap as well. I definitely use that for a little bit. This helps a lot with your Shattering Palm and clearing because you just have 100% increased critical damage bonus against enemies that are on full life. And same for First Approach. First Approach also would help a lot with like this initial clear, right? To get the chain going. So these are things you can consider. Some people asked me about Thin Ice and Heavy Frost, by the way. I do not really like them. I also do not want to waste points for Freeze Threshold. I just get the ailment threshold on the jewels eventually. But if you feel like you're getting frozen by everything after going CI, you can consider that. So this is for the Annoints. Venoms is just I took actually stun threshold, and you should take all attributes. I took 10 chaos rest, but because I didn't know if I want to go CI. But yeah, you want to go CI on this. CI feels great. It is really, really good, and the CI gives you bleed and poison immunity now, right? So you don't have to solve these two things, which feels pretty good as well. And when it comes to leveling, I will put a path of building in the description, and I will put a Twitch VOD. I did not do the full campaign. I stopped mid-Act 2 just because like I knew, okay, it's gonna work. But I put a path of building with a passive tree in the description that will, like with support gems and with the skill gems, that will be good enough to get you 2 maps. And when you are in maps, you just go for the crit nodes and unspec all the stuff that is in the leveling POB. Or you just go crit earlier on. It's just like crit nodes don't have value if you don't have high crit chance. I wouldn't like recommend, but yeah. So that's basically how you level. Shattering Palm is a comment I want to do real quick. Obviously requires level 41, so you don't have that early on. So until you are basically an Cruel or Act 4, you can use different Palm abilities, or like Ice Strike to like explode your Frozen Locus. You guys know the goal. And at the end of the day, you want to explode Frozen Locus. You can use AoE gems so that it clears better. But yeah, this is how you can do leveling. Overall, I'm gonna be honest, completely honest, guys, this build requires brain. If you like that, and if you like to jump around, to have a little bit more combo-focused gameplay, if you like to have a build that is just not easy, no? If you like Lightning Spear and if you want to be 100% efficient, go Lightning Spear, unless it's dead in 0.3. I'll ready to LFG in that case. But like, this is a build that is not best at anything. It's not best at clearing. It's not best at face tanking. It's not best at bossing. But it can do everything pretty well. And I'm going to be honest, I'm surprised how well it turned out. And I think this is actually like a cool and fun journey to go with, especially if you didn't play this archetype yet. I'm gonna be completely honest, this build is the most fun build I played in PoE 2. I didn't play like that many. I played bows, I played Ice Strike, I played Lightning Spear, Stormlands, and I played like some mages, cold spells. I did not play warrior yet. Oh, I played crossbow, I played with galvanic shards, I played grenades. This one is the most fun I had, I'll be honest. And it is so satisfying to see the build evolving. It is so satisfying to see these differences when you put in a little bit of freeze build up, and you can always experiment around. You can always build a little bit less defenses than I do. I would not suggest you guys to go sub 5k energy shield in the end game, because the additional stun threshold and ailment threshold obviously scale with your EHP, right? But you can technically drop this part of a tree. Yeah, you will see. I can recommend. And when it comes to weapon swap, one last thing. In our main weapon, we have damage. And in our offhand, we do have the energy shield recharge rate things, so that we can always meditate with our offhand. Let me like remove my overflow real quick. So just look at the difference of how long meditate takes without energy shield recharge rate nodes. Just look down here, bottom left. And now I'm weapon swapping to lose my HP real quick again. If you compare that to having the energy shield recharge nodes now. No. You don't want to sit in maps and meditate for 6 seconds if you can also just meditate for free. That's the weapon swap. And that is about it. Thanks for watching very much. If you have questions, I am sometimes live on Twitch. All the links that I talked about are in the video description. And one last thing, actually, generating power charges on bosses. I just it came up. How to generate power charges on bosses. You can technically remove some aura that doesn't do anything on like pinnacle bosses. For example, the cast on freeze, Herald of Thunder setup is irrelevant on bosses. You can remove that and put in a Tempest spell, and you can freeze the Tempest spell and thus gain power charges. Technically, your damage uptime on bosses would be better with that. There's also the opportunity to remove Herald of Thunder and cast on freeze and put in attrition, or you can also additionally remove combat frenzy and charge infusion completely, all of these 4 auras, and put in Trinity for damage boost on pinnacle bosses. All the footage you've seen, I did not do that because I'm lazy and I cannot die with this build. I can do every pinnacle boss. I mean, Arbiter maybe not, but like all the others, I basically cannot die, even on the highest difficulty, and I'm just chilling. But if you want to min-max the pinnacle bosses, this is kind of what you want to do, maybe. So yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I hope that a lot of people try this. I genuinely think it's fun, and I put a lot of effort into actually min-maxing this build. I personally would say this is more fun than the Ice Strike build has been, and I cope, and we will see in the future, but I cope that it's not going to get nuked in 0.3. So in the next patch GGG does, I can definitely see a world in which this survives because it just is not completely one-shotting everything, even on high budget. And yeah, have a good one, boys. Thanks for watching.